when you can go to bed knowing that you already know what your first steps are in the morning, that's a very powerful place to be.
Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Whether you're a sales professional, not in sales, but interested in helping people solve problems, or you're a founder, CEO who's looking to grow your business, you'll find practical tools, stories, and experience you can apply to your role. This is Mike Simmons. I'm the founder of Catalyst Sale. It's April Fool's Day, and we are running this interview without our host, Jody Mayberry. We do have a friend of Jody's and a friend of the show on with us, Jeff Noel. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody. Happy April Fool's Day.
So Jeff, you're on here to help us to understand what does it really mean to think differently and do the impossible. Let's start with think differently. When I say think differently, what do you think?
I think of taking risks, small calculated risks that if you fail, it's no big deal. You can recover from it, you learn from it, and then you try again. So thinking differently is about envisioning a future that's not only better than now, but it's much better than now. And I think we all dream big dreams, but what this is about actually taking action to move in the direction of that impossible dream. And if I could clarify impossible, Mike, what I mean is it's not something that no one has ever done. It's your impossible, something that you haven't done.
And Jeff, I think that's a really important point because many times people think of the impossible as something that just hasn't been done, but your personal impossible is that thing that you've not yet accomplished.
Yeah, it's this script in our head that I could never do that. I could never host a podcast, or I could never be a guest on a podcast, or I could never run a 5K, or I could never play a musical instrument. When we tell ourselves that, we start to believe it. But if you've had this burning desire since you were a little kid to be able to play a guitar and keep a campfire group captivated and engaged, then what would stop you? The script that you say, oh, I don't have time. I'm not going to ever be good enough. And I would say, just try it. Wherever it is, wherever your impossible is.
Why do we struggle with this?
Mostly fear. And then there's time, and we use time to justify not doing anything. I often talk about waiting and doing nothing are the twin siblings of self-destruction. You know, we crush our dreams when we wait, we put it off, and we crush our dreams when we don't do anything. And waiting and doing nothing are almost synonymous. And we can pick a busy schedule, confused priorities. There are a lot of reasons why we don't try. And I think the best way to get to wherever our impossible is, Mike, is to do it one step at a time, one day at a time. I was talking with someone the other day about, I'm coming up on writing 5 blogs a day for 10 consecutive years. That's like 3,650 days or something like that in a row without missing a day. And when I started, I didn't know if I was going to make it 2 days in a row. And my goal was never to do it as long as I did. But one day turned into the next, and here you are.
How often are you trying to do impossible things?
I literally say all the time, Mike. I mean, again, this isn't something that no one's done. It's something that I've never done. I thrive on 3 things. 3 things that really feel like I get to do them. I don't have to do them. They don't feel like work to me. I'm at my best when I'm taking risks, when I'm thinking differently, and when I'm envisioning a future that's not only better than now, but much better than now. I don't know where that came from. I believe I had that DNA for that. We probably all do as a child. And somehow I held on to that even before I went to Disney. You know, and then Disney just allowed that to grow and prosper. And now as a small business owner for the last 4+ years, it's really been an exciting experiment to everything I do is a risk because I've never been a small business owner before. So year over year, there's never a guarantee that I'll stay in business or that I will grow, but I keep pushing it, trying new things.
Do you design space in your day to open up the opportunity to think differently, or think about the things that you've not accomplished yet that may be impossible, maybe in this area of impossible, you're impossible, but an area that you want to expand beyond? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Well, so a lot of people wait until the morning to do their planning time. And I believe the workday begins the night before. So I go to bed knowing how my first couple of hours of the day is going to go. And also the bigger piece of what I want to do for that day. I already know before. I don't need 15 minutes or whatever the time management gurus tell you. You should take 15 minutes every morning. That's not bad advice. All I'm saying is I don't want to wake up and figure it out. I want to go to bed knowing already. I don't know if that makes sense, but when you can go to bed knowing that you already know what your first steps are in the morning, that's a very powerful place to be. And it frees you up with whatever creative, writer's block or whatever you might call that. Like when I wake up in the morning, I don't know, I got all these different competing priorities. And what that does though, is you have to back into that. And somehow during your day or evening, you've got to map that out. So in my head, I can't imagine waking up and not knowing how the day is going to unfold. Now, granted, there are already meetings on our calendar from other people and so on. We already know about those things. But what about the first part of your day, the first hour, the first 2 hours? What does that look like? So I start the first 2 hours of the day with writing, meditating, praying, thinking, reading. It's from 5 to 7. That's a really quiet time of the day and in the house. And it's a personal victory that I get every single day. And that's what has allowed me to write for over 3,500 days in a row. It somehow became a habit. It wasn't a habit. And so all of this, Mike, through our rituals that we develop habits. And part of getting to impossible is redefining some of the habits that keep us away from taking steps forward. Like if one of our habits is to have that script that says, I'll never be able to do it. I don't have time. I don't have money. I don't believe in myself. Somebody else is better than me. When we have the habit of telling that script to ourselves, we got to figure out a way to re-script that ritual and have a different script so that, like, who better than me? Everybody else who's done this has gone through this same struggle that I'm going through. I'm just in this spot in the journey, and the journey requires the next steps from me, and I'm ready to take them. That kind of thing.
Yeah. And Jeff, what that makes me wonder is, where do you go for inspiration? Like where do you go to get yourself in the right headspace to think about these things, to expand thought? Where do you go for inspiration?
Well, Michael Eisner, when he retired from Disney in 2005 and Bob Iger took over, when Michael Eisner retired, he wrote a book. I don't remember if he wrote it before or after he retired, but the book is called A Work in Progress. All of us are a work in progress, I'm 60 years old, Mike. I have made a lot of mistakes. So where I'm at in my life has just been from trial and error, from taking risks, from thinking differently, and being motivated by a vision of the future that's not only better than now, but it's much better than now, right? It's dreaming. It's sort of, we all know how to dream. It's just manifesting that dream in such a way that whatever hard work and sacrifice and discomfort that I have to go through, I rationalize that I'm going to experience all of that because the future is going to be worth it. I would be cheating myself, my family, my coworkers, my clients, my community, if I didn't push through this to become a better version of myself. And Mike, a real big catalyst for me was having this notion in 2008 and 9 during the economic crisis that I should have a plan B in case something bad ever happened and there were layoffs at Disney that, you never saw coming. I should plan, time to plan for your next job is when you don't need to. And I remembered 30 years prior that I had this dream of writing a book to my kids. And I'm like, man, that was 30 years ago. You haven't written the first sentence. That was very motivating for me, having that catalyst. So maybe part of it, Mike, is having some time to self-reflect and think about your life and look all around you. When bad things are happening to you, they can be catalysts, a nudge, a push, a wake-up call for you to rekindle those earlier dreams in your life that you had. Because if you can latch onto a great dream that's yours and it's been yours for a long, long time, man, that's powerful.
And this stuff is hard. You'll fail.
Of course it's hard. If it was easy, none of us would even be on this podcast trying to get some valuable information to help us push through the stuff that we're struggling with right now if it was easy.
Well, and as you go through, one of the things that comes to mind for me as you're discussing it is this is all very personal. It requires self-reflection. It requires honesty. It requires trust in yourself. It requires a commitment to give yourself the freedom to do things that you have been scared to do before, to get uncomfortable. In order to do your impossible, you will have to be uncomfortable. And at first, your impossible might seem smaller than somebody else's impossible, but that's just part of the process. It's part of the process of going through and making incremental steps. Do you agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, and you said something that triggered a thought. My son, our son is a senior in high school, and his school counselor for the past 4 years, all 4 years in high school, her email signature includes a quote. I don't remember who said it, but comparison is the death of joy. And when we start comparing ourselves to others, that's like putting water on a fire. And somehow we have to find every time that dragon rears its head and says, yeah, but so-and-so, look what they're doing, man. And we go, yeah, I could never do that. We got to find a way to get that script out of our head. And, one of the hacks that I use is I love following stories of people who were just the most unlikely candidates for something great. They were just an ordinary person who had incredible obstacles, and we all do. We're just like that person, just in a different way. And I'm like, and you start doing the math and putting the pieces together, and it all comes down to you have this big dream. You eat the elephant. This might be an African proverb. You eat the elephant one bite at a time. If you sat down and said, we're going to eat the whole elephant, you would never even start because it would feel impossible. But if you could eat the elephant one bite at a time, eventually the elephant would be done. One day at a time, Mike. It's just one day at a time.
Yeah. And that journey, whether it's the journey of eating the elephant or it's the journey of 10,000 steps, or it's the getting up to the top of a mountain, it all happens with one step each time. They're all incremental steps that are right in front of you. Don't make this bigger than it is. Focus on the one thing, the thing that's right in front of you that you can do and move things forward. And give yourself the freedom, the flexibility of failing. One of the hacks that I use, and Jeff, you shared yours in the story component. One of the hacks that I use is anytime I get myself into that headspace of what am I doing wrong? Why am I not seeing that same kind of success? How are they doing something differently? Why does it seem like those things come easy to others? Is I remind myself, I have no idea what their journey looked like. I have no idea how they got from where they are to where they were to where they are today. I have no idea how many times they had to go through that iteration to get to that place. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was a Tim Ferriss podcast, and the author of Loon Shots was on it, and he's got a note up in his office, and it's called "The Adventures of Luke Starkiller." And in the significance of that quote in his office is to remind himself that was one of the original iterations of Star Wars, and and the story before it was refined was not very strong. The characters were out of place. This takes time, and you all have time, but that time is going to continue. You're going to get to the end of the journey, whether you make these changes, whether you make these shifts or not. And I just, as you shared your hack, that kind of sent me off on a bit of a tangent. So, and sometimes our tangents have tangents. So, Jeff, bringing things back to just the thinking process that people can go through. What if someone is struggling with outside sources? So let's say it's just not their headspace, but it's the people around them that are creating some challenges, where it's even quotes that happen inside organizations. Well, that's just the way we've always done it. When you hear or see things like that, what can you do as an individual to help overcome those obstacles?
The first thing that comes to mind, Mike, is I went through this at Disney Institute. And to try and give you the essence of what it was, is I basically stopped worrying about what everybody else was doing or not doing. And I said, how can I be the best facilitator, the best keynote speaker, the best business consultant that I can possibly be? Could I even be the best on the entire team of excellent presenters, advisors? Could I be the best? And what would that take? And I got so busy trying to hone my craft. And I never wanted to be a speaker. And for the listeners, in 1999, the phone rang when I was a concierge manager at Disney's Grand Floridian Resort. And they said, we want to interview you to be a speaker. And I'm like, you've got the wrong person. I have no idea what you're talking about. This was the Disney Institute. And I never dreamt about being a speaker. Was never. And I hung up the phone and I said, why is this happening to me? Why are they coming to me? And it was because I had, at that point, 15 years of frontline cast member and frontline leadership experience. And they knew they couldn't teach what I knew, that I'm an expert at that. They could teach me how to speak. You can have a great speaker who doesn't have the depth and breadth of the experience. And when I put my confidence, all my eggs in that basket, I said, they could teach me. Yeah, they could teach me how to do this. And so the point is, that's how I became a speaker. And then I started just focusing on how can I be the very best? Every time I would speak, I would take a risk. What if I put the question before this content instead of at the end of the content? I would just take little risks that if I messed up, it wouldn't be enough that would catch anybody's attention, but I could look at the audience's reaction and see if the placement of the question had a significant no change, a significant positive difference, had no change, or actually sort of took the learning a little bit lower than it should have been. I just became obsessed with how do I become a better speaker. And I would also then teach the new people in a way that when you teach others, it requires you to teach is to learn twice. So I would tell people, I would tell anybody who's listening right now is get a grip on the reality that you're not going to change anybody. This was really hard for me to accept because I'm a helper. I want to help people. And we can all look at others and go, yeah, man, they really need to change. And we're the same way. We all have blind spots. And I thought, what are my blind spots? Let me figure them out. Let me try and get to the discovery of what my blind spots are. Let me try and polish those up. Maybe I won't ever eliminate them, but I can certainly alleviate their impact and just really focus on what I do. Start thinking of yourself as an artist, in a cookie cutter world. You want to become a craftsperson. You want to be, and you're not doing it for anybody else except for you and the people that you serve. What this might do, though, if you're going to get out of office politics, is it may inhibit. Somebody might play the politics better and get a promotion ahead of you. And just ask yourself, is the promotion what I really want? Or do I want to be the best at what I do? I want to feel like I couldn't be any better at what I'm doing. And my clients and my customers and the employees, they all benefit in ways now that they didn't benefit from me in the past because I wasn't focused on being excellent.
Jeff, we're going to give people a little insight into how this is going. You're actually walking from the gym back to your house. At least I think that's where you're going. So, I think in Disney terms, you'd call this, we're letting people kind of see what's happening backstage. So as we go through, as people think about where we've gone with this discussion, I like to think about it, or I'm thinking about it more from the standpoint of a journey, where I'm taking this journey from where I am today to where I want to go. And there are many of these stories out there that talk about the hero's journey and how heroes make that transition from where they are today to this better thing that they can be in the future. Where does journey come into this overall discussion around thinking differently and doing the impossible?
Well, Mike, I'm going to make an assumption that the people listening to this podcast are ambitious and they're listening for ideas and insight that would help them become better at what they're doing, particularly in sales. What I would say on this journey is it is a journey. And if you look too far ahead, you lose what you should be doing now. You're so focused on the prize that we can sometimes neglect the small victories that we can get every day. Making one more call, finding a way than you did the day before, finding a way to surprise and delight your customers, even the ones that potential customers that say no. You find a way because they would never expect it from any other salesperson. You find a way to communicate with them one more time. You're not asking them for anything. You're thanking them. You're wishing them well. Something that is unexpected and positive. It's likely that you will wow them, and you will probably never hear from them again. But what you will get is the satisfaction knowing that you did the right thing, that you are setting yourself apart from the salesperson that you used to be. And many of the other salespeople out there, you are trying to become an artist. You're trying to do your craft in a way that is just different enough that the people who interact with you would remark about it. He's really friendly. She's really great at follow-up. She's really compassionate. He's really not in this for himself. He really cares about me. That people would remark about those things. That's what I would do, man. On my journey, what do I do now? And how do I be the absolute best? And I'm not saying I want to be the best that is on our team. That may come. First, just be the best you can be. Find what is it, and figure out, Mike, what is it that feels like you get to do it? You don't have to do it. I love taking risks. When I take risks, when I think differently, you know, when I'm dreaming about a future, like what if, you know, that never feels like work for me. And other people taking risks would be like, oh no, I might fail. I might ruin my chance for a promotion. I might mess up. I might frustrate my boss or my client or my colleagues. I might lose the sale, you know, but for me, I'm like, but what if it works? What if it propels me and the way I do business in a way that I could have never envisioned? And it's like, not only is it better, but it's like exponentially better than the way I used to do it. I mean, let that be the thing that lights your fire, is how do I become just amazing? How I was going to say, you know, have a cape and everything, but as we know from watching The Incredibles, that's a Disney movie if you've never seen it, but the advisor to the superhero basically says, never wear a cape.
You never want to wear a cape just because it'll get stuck. And if you haven't watched the movie, you should go watch it.
Yeah, but basically what I'm saying to sum all that up, Mike, is can you launch yourself into a place where you feel like, man, I have come so far from a month ago, from 6 months ago, from this time last year. And I would say, don't wait to start. You know, often what happens is a year from today, from right now, as you're listening to this, a year from today, if you don't do anything, you're going to look back and go, man, a year ago, I wish I would have started then.
Yeah, and it's going to happen. That year's going to happen. So let's take this date. And I know dates are really important to you, Jeff. And if anybody has questions around why dates are important, you should listen to the episode that we had that went live on December 25th, called The First Noel, and I'll have a link in the show notes to that. But today is April 1st. You may be listening to this on a day different than April 1st, but we are working. We want to be the catalyst that gives you the freedom to think differently about how you're approaching your role, give you that extra space to rethink the way that you're doing things, to take risks, to take chances. So, Jeff, what question should someone ask? What's another question that someone should ask as they go through this to help inspire that freedom to move things forward and get moving on this journey?
Well, the first question I would ask is, what do I get by not changing? What do I get? If I don't change, what's in it for me? To be really honest, because that should be the catalyst for changing. And I can't emphasize enough, one of the first things you want to do that I would recommend, if you're asking me for advice, it is stop worrying about other people and start worrying about yourself. Take that energy and time and emotional currency that you would take to think somebody else should be doing this or doing that, and get in front of the mirror and use that energy, that rechannel it to yourself, so that you can take inventory of what you do. You start studying the best people that do what you do and take the bits that you think you would be able to incorporate fairly easily, and just start small and stay at it and reflect on, is this working? You know, it's a very simple concept of launch, learn, revise. Try something, really small thing, try it. Just do something differently, think differently, try it. Learn from it. Did it make it better? Did it stay the same? Or did it get worse? And then revise based on that. If it made it better, then figure out what you want to revise is your ability to do that same thing. That's now you're doing that every time you do it. Because before you had done the experiment, you weren't doing it at all. So launch, learn, revise. And if it went worse, maybe for starters, go back to the way that was safe, and then think, well, how could I try that same thing differently? And then ask yourself, did it get better? Did it stay the same? Did it get worse? It's a continuous try something, thumbs up, thumbs medium, thumbs down. And when this can become a habit and a ritual, you'll start taking risks, small calculated risks. You won't even know you're doing it. You're just in this mode of continuously improving. And people will notice. They'll be like, wow, he's really excellent. She's really amazing.
They will absolutely notice. And Jeff, if people want to notice you more or find you, because I'm trying to connect those two together, where can people find out more about who you are, what you're doing, and where you're focused?
So I'm a keynote speaker, and my goal, Mike and I talked about this offline. I'm not here to try and get you to book me for a speech. I don't think that's even a remote possibility. I do this because Mike and I are connected through Jody Mayberry, and I love paying it forward. I will tell you that I started a podcast January 25th with Jody Mayberry, and it's called "If Disney Ran Your Life." We haven't promoted it. We publish every Friday, so there's like 9 episodes out already. By the time this goes live, there'll be probably 10 or 11. And but we're not telling anybody. I'm calling it the basement tapes, the cast previews. It's just me and Jody practicing, and we're putting it out on iTunes and Stitcher. If Disney Ran Your Life, and you could have fun listening to that and see what I'm actually practicing. Everything that I've been talking about, taking risks. It will be a fascinating thing to watch. I don't know how long we're going to keep it up. We're probably going to take it off and then go to season 2, which will be take what we've learned from the first season of Mistakes and Experiments and have a season 2, which will be a shorter version. Season 1 was 14 episodes. Season 2 will be smaller, and then have the official launch where I start telling people, hey, I've got this podcast. It's great. You should go there. And because I've never been a podcaster before, I've spoken to over 1 million people, 2,000 different organizations since 1999. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from making mistakes. I've never been a podcaster before, so I haven't made enough mistakes to even remotely be a good podcaster. So Jody's helping me get some experience and making a lot of mistakes and trying different things. So that's what I would say, Mike.
Awesome. We'll include links into the show notes. Jeff, thank you for being a friend. Thank you for sharing your experience, and thank you for helping to be being a catalyst for those who are out there interested in thinking differently and doing the impossible in their lives.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. I've been honored to be back on your show. I had fun doing this. And this whole time I've been walking back from the gym, so using AirPods. So we took the risk. We thought differently, took the risk on maybe sacrificing some sound quality to be able to record in an environment that worked well with my schedule. And so fingers crossed that the sound quality was at least good.
Jeff, thanks for sharing your walk with us. Please check out If Disney Ran Your Life, Jeff's new podcast. If you know somebody who would benefit from hearing this discussion, please share it with them and let us know via Twitter or LinkedIn. Your ratings and reviews help people discover the podcast. Thank you for reviewing the podcast. We'll begin reading reviews on future episodes. Thank you for listening to the Catalyst Self Podcast. Go out there, think differently, and do the impossible.